I think we can distinguish 5 types of suffering as we look around the world. There's normal suffering, death, decay, disease. That kind of suffering comes to us all, and we shouldn't be surprised by it. It's the consequence of living in a fallen world. Ever since Adam and Eve in the garden turned their backs on God, the whole cosmos has been out of joint, and we experience the consequences of that every day. Hurting ourselves, being sick, growing old, being infirm, having our relationships fall apart, being hurt emotionally, being hurt psychologically. That's normal suffering that comes as a result of living in a fallen world. Then there's abnormal suffering, that kind of suffering that comes when a bridge collapses or there's an earthquake or a massive tsunami, where the world seems to shout at us in our suffering, and that is abnormal suffering, excessive suffering, the kind of suffering that makes people wonder if there is a God, and if there is a God, how could that God be a God of love, a God of wisdom, a God of power? The third type of suffering I think we need to distinguish is the kind of suffering that happens when, for example, a child is abused by an adult. Innocent suffering. Suffering where the sufferer has done absolutely nothing to deserve anything, and yet somebody has willingly and maliciously made that person suffer. The fourth type of suffering that I would talk about would be the suffering that comes when we do something wrong, something where we invite consequences on ourselves through our own actions. An example might be speeding and getting a speeding ticket, or consuming too much alcohol and getting liver disease. That kind of suffering is there and it's real and it shouldn't be discounted, but there's a clear link between the person who suffers and what they've done. And the fifth type of suffering that I think we can distinguish is the type of suffering that comes through righteousness. The type of suffering that we get because we're standing up for the gospel in word and in deed in the world.